Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
This is Serious Privacy by TrustArc. Here are your hosts, Paul Breitbart and Kay Royal.
Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us. I am back again with our second week with Ralph O'Brien as our co-host, and we've got a wonderful episode lined up for you today. We had been requested, Paul and I, to do an episode on taking the IAPP exams. So I thought that would be absolutely perfect to have Ralph join us because he actually teaches the training program to take the exams. There's a lot of politics kind of in here. Well, and I guess they're not politics, they're rules. But let's dive into that. My name is Kay Royal.
And I'm Ralph O'Brien, and welcome to Serious Privacy.
Thank you, Ralph. Do you have an unexpected question, Prep?
Yeah, unexpected question. Do I have to go on to you this week?
Yeah, I was going to say, I might as well let you since you're doing the part there. Okay, but here we go.
Does that mean the unexpected question is, what's my unexpected question?
Exactly. What's your unexpected question? But that's okay.
No, go ahead, bud.
You wish you could stop blank from happening.
Oh, well, as a privacy professional, it would be, covert surveillance and privacy infractions and everything. That's the boring answer, isn't it? That's the boring answer.
That's the expected answer. It's not the unexpected answer. But, it's kind of a hard question because you think, what do you want to end? War.
Yeah.
Answer.
Global peace. Yeah.
We this is what we want. It's the pageant answer. We want world peace.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's kind of a crap question. But
so, I could make it more interesting and say, hey, I want the next Marvel or Star Wars to hurry up and get here quicker, right? I mean, that's probably the true answer. That's sad, isn't it? Sad, isn't it?
If we think about what we want to happen right now in the United States, one of our lotteries is up to over $1 billion.
Oh, I'll take that.
Mega Millions. And it's funny because, of course, we bought tickets for last night's drawing, which was 830 million, I think it was, and nobody won. So now it's up to over $1 billion. I think this may be the first time in history. So, people are going to be going out and buying tickets. So I told my husband, I'm like, is this the time when we splurge? They're $2 a ticket. Do we buy 500 tickets? And then I thought about the company that made the news in the past few days that bought $50,000 worth of tickets for their employees. So maybe they have 25,000 employees. I don't know. But they bought tickets for their employees, $50,000, and nobody won. So you're not increasing your chances of your numbers being drawn. You're just increasing your opportunities to play.
Yeah, true. I'm not a huge amount of a gambler. But, the one thing I would say, though, is I'm one of these horrible people. And, a lot of people say this, but for me, it's genuinely true. Even if I'd still had a big payout on something like a lottery or the gambler, I'm one of those horrible people who I think I'd still turn up to work Monday morning.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay. I would still work. I just might not still work at what I'm doing now. But I promise you, my loyal listeners, we will continue the podcast.
We'd still do the podcast.
I just might hire someone to do the production work afterwards. We actually do have an extra episode coming out, as I mentioned last week, with the top 3 privacy podcast people on it. So we'll have that. But, Ralph, let's dive in a little bit to the...
You've done it. You've done the Paul thing. Hello, Paul. I hope you enjoyed the holiday.
Exactly. So let's talk about IAPP exams. And given that you're in the middle of this, you've been doing this for a long time. What's your thoughts? How'd you get into this? Tell me all. Tell me everything.
How did I get into it? Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, IAPP is one of many qualifications, of course, that's out there. I would say it's become the industry standard,
Yeah.
in the many recruiters or job applications, you'll see the CIP-E in Europe or the CIP-US over in the US or the CIP-C in Canada, or the CIP-M,
Now, I'll qualify. I got my CIPP when there was not a CIPP US.
Mm,
okay. And I think Trevor still has on his signature CIPP. But once they turned it into the /US, they told everyone we couldn't use CIPP anymore. You call it SIP. It's like PIPL and PIPL. I get it. It's easier to say the SIP part, but I've never thought of it that way. Anyway, they told everyone we had to use the /US now. We could not use just the CIPP. But I noticed for a long time, and I haven't checked recently, that Trevor still used CIPP. And I mean, Trevor Hughes,
it's his purview, isn't it? As the
right.
as the head of IAPP.
We're not going to take his away.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of qualifications out there. For example, one of the things I always actually tell people on my CIP-E course is it does a great job giving you about EU law, the GDPR as such. But we don't really go into the vagaries of national law or industry law. So there are always going to be, further courses you can take, practitioner courses, longer courses, perhaps. I've recently been involved with the University of Maastricht, where Paul teaches at, to doing their DPO course, and are talking about training there as well. So, there's lots of different courses out there, but I think a lot of people end up doing the CIP-E, the CIP-US, the CIP-M, the CIP-C, whatever.
I want to go get the CIP Asia.
Yeah, do you know what? I was on the first run of doing the CIP Asia, actually, when there wasn't a course. So I was actually at KPMG with Mark Thompson at the time.
Okay.
And we were asked to be on the trial run. I've always found that one a little bit interesting because the syllabus for it, with CIP US, you're looking at US law. With the CIP-C, you're looking at Canadian law. With the CIP-E, you're looking at the GDPR. But, with the CIP Asia, it's actually a number of different jurisdictions from across Asia. It's like the Philippines and Hong Kong, and I forget India. I kind of forget which ones now. But, it strikes me as an odd qualification, actually, because it mixes a number of different legal jurisdictions as opposed to it being one centralized legal framework but for the qualification.
Which means you don't have to know all of them in excruciating detail, but you have to know them well enough to be prepared for the questions. And the questions on the IAPP exams, we'll get into that in a little bit. I'll let you keep talking about this. We're gonna talk about the questions on the IAPP exams. But yes, and I do have the CDPSE from ISACA. So there are others out there for privacy people. Here in the US, there's I think there's certified health information, things like that. So there are others if you're looking at, but you're right. The IAPP ones have become essentially the default ones that are listed in all the job descriptions.
Yeah. And that's a mixed bag. That makes it a good thing and a bad thing. Certainly good for the IAPP. I've always seen them as entry-level qualifications, because the actual courses that we deliver are, 2 days, essentially. The CIP-E is 2 days, the CIP-M is 2 days. And whilst the courses are good, it's a lot of concentrated knowledge in a short period of time. And as I'm sure you're aware, 2 days does not a privacy professional make.
Yeah, exactly.
So we always recommend that they follow it up with their own, study. They decide when they're ready to do the exam. Unless you're a privacy professional anyway who's been working in the field for quite some time, I never recommend that you just jump in on the course and then do the exam straight away. I always kind of tell people that this is your first taste of privacy, the CIP or CIP. You might want to, complement it with an amount of your own study before you get anywhere near looking at the exam.
Well, and the IAPP provides a lot of information that's free online. They have their outline of what the course materials are. I think there's a sample test, at least for some of them, maybe not for all of them. I do know that when they came out with the CIPM and the CIPT, I looked at taking them and I went, nah, I don't need those. I don't care.
The CIPT is quite good, actually.
Is it?
I
haven't taken it.
Yeah. So I teach it again, so I probably would say it's good. But
at least the instructor is.
But, I kind of think that some of the future in privacy is in automation, is in code, is in privacy by design, because, what's better for an organization, that we spend hours and hours and hours manually answering a subject access request, or we've got a computer system where they can print it out themselves?
Right.
So,
I absolutely agree. And that's one of the things that we've talked about quite often on the show is technology can be your friend. It's not a magic button, but why would you pay an attorney ungodly amounts of money for someone to sit down and do clerical work, which is not beneath me. Don't get me wrong. I've done it. By God, if the table needs to be set with napkins and forks, I'll be the one to set the napkins and forks. But why would you waste your money doing that?
Well, I had the same sort of experience around the time of the GDPR. There was a lot of people coming to us and saying, can you do a data inventory? And, I was saying, so at a consultant's day rate, do you want me to come in? And, I'm very reasonably priced, but at a consultant's day rate, do you want me to come in and basically ask all your staff what they're doing and write it down for you?
Yeah.
Number
and
one.
And they do.
Yeah, I mean, there were some interesting projects, and but I'd rather.
Oh my gosh, those 2 years leading up to GDPR were the phenomenal 2 years of projects.
But there's two types of consultancy. You can do it for them, or you can teach them to do it.
Right.
And actually, one of the problems I had doing it for them was in ownership, right? That actually at the end of the day, if we do it for you, what are you going to do in 6 months when it becomes out of date? You're going to call us again?
Well, and that was the thing. Working at TrustArc as the consultants doing it, one of the things that we did not anticipate, which maybe we should have in hindsight, but that a year later they wanted to hire us to come back to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, but we taught you this. We did it with you. We did it. No, they want someone to come in and crack the whip and get it done again that has the insight for them as to what processes should they document, what's important, which ones can they combine because they use the same processes, the same data, the same vendors. So you can do one DPIA for several, but you still got to document them as different processes. And at what level do you need to document them? Do you need to document what systems talk to each other, or you just need to document what data is in each system? So there is that expertise guidance that they want, but yeah, I'm with you. They need to learn how to do it. They're responsible for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kay. Totally agree with you. And also, so we should perhaps get back to the IAPB qualifications. And I think it's worth just going through which ones are available. We've used these abbreviations, but we haven't really said which ones are available and when. So
right, exactly.
So we've talked about the CIPE, which of course is European law, GDPR, the CIPC, the Canadian law, the CIP US law, the CIP-A, Asian law. But then there are the more specialist ones. So there's the CIPM, which is about privacy program management. Yeah, privacy program management. That ordinarily, I think you would take after your CIP-E, your CIP-C, your CIP-A.
You would think, but a lot of people try to take that first because they're working in privacy program management and they think they're not up on the law enough to take the others. So I agree. It's what you're most comfortable with. If you're comfortable with program management and you think you can come through that easily, then that's what you should choose to do. But I will, to follow up on what I said earlier about I wasn't interested in the M or the T until they came up with the Fellow of Information Privacy. And I wanted to be a fellow. And to be a fellow, you had to have either the M or the T on top of one of the others. And so I took the M. I have a lot of thoughts about the M, but I wanted to be a fellow. So there you go. I think that was a brilliant move on the part of IAPP, probably because they didn't have a huge influx of people taking the M or the T. So I don't know. I have no insight into that, but they came up with the fellow, and that was absolutely a brilliant move.
What I'm finding actually is over here, they tend to be marketed as actually a 4-day course. They actually market the CIP-E and the CIP-M together as a DPO ready course.
Right. So, I saw that when they came out with that. That was smart.
So I quite often train for 4 days, 2 days CIP-E, 2 days CIP-M. And then, that does mean 2 qualifications, 2 exams for the individuals. But we quite often do what they call, sort of condensed courses where you'll spend a week doing both CIP-E and CIP-M. And, some providers will then even extend you to do the exam on the Friday, which is, quite something to like spend 2 days CIP-E, 2 days CIP-M.
And then take the 2 days and then done. And then you have to get your years of experience and your references in order to qualify for a fellow. So let's talk about the training that you do. And by the way, for everyone out there, the IAPP has boards that run various parts of their programming. One of the boards is on the certification exams. Another board is on the books. Another board is on the training. And the people writing or working on the certification exams cannot be the people working on the training. So just to let you know, the people doing the training are not training from the actual certification exam that is out, because that's a conflict of interest. So there's a lot of times you'll say, oh, well, I was taught this in my training and they didn't ask it on the exam, or they asked this on the exam and it was never touched on the training, which is what happened to me. The exam covered it. It was never covered in training, different things. So let you know that that's by design. That's the ethics in the certifications that they need to have. So if you're surprised by that because you've taken one and it wasn't covered, sorry, that's part of the ethics of writing the exam.
And the IAPP do actually have a lot of control over the course material. So as a trainer, the slides of the IAPP, what you basically do is you buy sort of a pack from the IAPP that will include a sort of an ebook. So the CIPES one is written by a good friend Eduardo, for example. The CIPM was written by a good friend Russell Densmore, for example. So you get like an ebook that is a companion piece to the course. You get the slides, which they call the practitioner's guide with all of the notes underneath. And then you have the 2 days training as well, and a token to go and sit the exam within the next 6-12 months.
Right.
So and then various providers will, the IPP sell it direct, and they sell it through various other providers who can choose to do it as a concatenated course, all together or separately or virtually or in-house, depending on what goes on. I've done them both virtually, done them both in person. I love the in-persons. During COVID, there was, a lot of virtual training going on. The one thing I always direct people to, though, is the resources on the IPP website, especially the common body of knowledge. Now, what they call the common body of knowledge is virtually the exam syllabus. And I always tell people, when people say, how much revision do I need to do? Am I ready to do the exam? I kind of go, well, you look at that common body of knowledge, go through it with some ticks and crosses and kind of go, do I know this? Do I not know this? And then focus yourself on where you feel you need to do the work before you do the exam. I mean, the exams themselves are multiple choice, A, B, C, D.
Yep. And like all multiple choices, two of the answers will seem right. And I will say, for a long time, I was upset thinking that IAPP did not have people who knew how to write exam questions because the questions stink. Turns out, and sorry, IAPP, y'all have known me for a long time, but it turns out it's not that they don't have question writers. It's the fact they do hire question writers, but those question writers don't know privacy. So, so I was told. I'm going to say that. I'm not discounting anyway. I was told that that's where the disconnect is they have professional test writers, probably outsource it. I don't know. But those people probably don't understand privacy. They're going strictly by the information that's in the book or the paragraph or something like that. But it is a hard test. Yes, you can mess it up easily because the questions don't seem to make sense sometimes.
So what they do is, it's not a case of saying you need 60% to pass. It's the fact that there are various domains. So under the CP, for example, there are 3 domains. One is understanding the GDPR or the EU law. The other one is applying it to various situations, HR, surveillance, you name it. And the third part is history, where you learn things like how the EU works and what the difference is between a directive and a regulation, and the human rights law and the directives and regulations that predated the GDPR. And actually what I find is a lot of people, especially in the CIPE, will fail that first module but pass the other 2 because they're they're privacy practitioners. They're used to doing the walk. They know what the law says, that they know how to apply it in practice. But they've never really looked at the history or the background,
to understand the foundation and the fundamentals of where it comes from. I agree that was a big part of the exam that we had. On the management exam, the CIPM, looking at that, I know one of the biggest things that I had to caution people about was, if you've been running privacy programs for a while and you know how they work, throw your actual real world knowledge out the window and go by the book, because the IAPP uses terminology. I don't know why, but they use terminology that is not necessarily the terminology that practitioners use in the field. but you have to go by that terminology. And it might be different based on where you are. It could be in the US, it's a different terminology. Maybe people in the Europe actually work with it. I don't know.
No, it is interesting because, for example, under the GDPR, we know we've got a definition of a data breach, accidental or unlawful loss, damage, disclosure, blah, 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 blah. But in the CIPM exam, they use the word confirmed disclosure, for example, which is the difference in their mind between an incident and a breach. A confirmed. Now, we know that it's not only disclosure, it could be alteration or damage or loss or access.
Inability to access, different things like that. But you have to use the terminology that the book uses, because that's what the questions are written around. And there are some questions in there. I mean, people, of course, if you love something, you're going to nitpick it to death. So I'm going to nitpick it to death. Let's just be honest. But it is a very valuable series of certifications to go for. Look outside. If you specialize in other areas, look in those areas to see if there's other exams you should be getting. I love the ISACA one because it calls me a privacy engineer. I think that's amazing. I love it. But if you're in healthcare, there are healthcare certifications here in the US. I don't know if there are healthcare certifications in Europe or the UK.
There are. I mean, as you know, here in the UK, we've got the National Health Service, the NHS, and we call it information governance in the NHS here. And the NHS operates something called the DSPT, the Security and Privacy Toolkit, which is a very unique thing for that industry. And if you want to supply
I've done that.
Oh, you've done the DSPT. Great. Okay, wonderful. Sorry, Kay, of course.
No. The audience needs to hear about it. I've done it once.
Yeah.
Y'all should listen to Ralph on this one, because it seems like the toolkit should be easy. We'll just fly right through it. No,
it's evidence-led. Yeah, it's evidence-led. So you can't just say, yes, I do this and move on whistling. They actually look for, evidence of implementation, which is quite something, really.
Yeah,
it's a different standard to get to. So yeah, the NHS Information Governance DSPT, that needs some quite specialist training, of course.
Okay.
So yeah, there will always be industry sector training. Over here in the UK, I actually like what the British Computer Society's got a course called the Practitioner's Certificate in Data Protection.
Ooh, okay.
It looks at a lot of the UK law specifics, for example, PCR, the UK Data Protection Act, that you're not going to get on a CIPE because it's more of a generalized, ER course. So, I think there's room for all. I think what's interesting, though, is none of these training courses are necessarily endorsed or approved by the regulators because they're not going to do that. They're not going to improve or endorse one significant provider over another. And in fact, it was quite a scandal when the IAPP got the contract to deliver the training for the DPC in Ireland. So it's a very interesting market when people come to me and say, what qualification do I need to be a DPO, for example? And in the law, it just says on the basis of professional quality and legal expertise.
Yeah, we're like, you need knowledge, you need intelligence, you need creativity, you need some practical experience to be a DPO. There's some things. I will say that I've heard that people as outsourced DPOs don't necessarily have the internal company cooperation that they need to examine things. So you're already handicapped there. I used to be a huge fan of the outsourced DPO, but I will say it's a two-way street. The company has got to cooperate with their DPO, or they're not even telling their DPO what's going on. And then something happens and the DPO is held accountable. And you're like, hey, they never told me.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I was speaking to an outsourced DPO the other day who told me he had about 300 customers as well, which made me laugh because, that means you're not spending a working day with any of them.
No.
Basically, they're a telephone number people could call rather than actually operating as a proper DPO.
Well, in the history, in law, Germany has pretty much always required a DPO for all known history that I know of. And that was a case of you just needed someone on call. If something went wrong with the company, you had someone that would swoop in and help work out things with the regulators because they spoke the language. But it wasn't someone who actually knew your business or worked with you on a regular basis. And the GDPR version of DPO is someone that should know what your company's doing. They should know the key players. They should be considered an important part of the company, even if they're outsourced, even if they only spend one day a month with you. That's still one day a month.
Yeah, true enough. And I mean, but then it's always interesting, like I said, when it says in the law, professional qualities and legal expertise, I've often had people come to me, well, how do I prove that? How do I prove that I'm competent? Because, the CIPE and CIPM are brilliant, but they are multiple choice exams and you can You could ask yourself whether, if you're very, very good at doing exams and retaining knowledge,
And some people are.
Do it after a 2-day course and then go and sit an exam. Does that make you just having those letters after your name, does that make you the best DPO you can be, or the best privacy professional you can be for that organization?
I like letters after my name, Ralph.
I love it. I've got several, but but I don't lead with that. I lead with, we've been doing this for 24 years.
Yeah. And that's mine. I've kind of tried to get away from the number of decades, because that number of decades is growing and growing.
Yeah, true.
But it is true. So the exams are a wonderful thing to have. Pay attention to the knowledge, the knowledge body that they tell you to go into. If you have to make it a longer outline, go in and put stuff under each one. Pay attention to how it's divided. Pay attention to the terminology used. Use the terminology. Another person said that they were advised to keep up with current events in order to do it. I don't know that current events are necessarily built into the exam, because these are written.
They do revise them sort of semi-annually.
Yeah.
The next revision for the CIPI and the CIPM, the next syllabus is October 22. So on October 22, and I've been telling this, so funny enough, I was only delivering last week. And I was telling the delegates, you may well have 12 months to sit your exam, but do it before October the 22 at the latest, because it'll be a new syllabus.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're going to take the Asia, do it before the PIPL made its way into it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But no, current events are good, but it's not like you need to have current events that happened yesterday. You need the big movement in current events.
It's things like shrimps, things like Consuela.
Exactly.
The sort of the big cases.
It's the shrimps. It's the standard contractual clauses. It's the cross-border transfers. What do you need to do? It's the big decisions. Brexit. Yes. It's those kinds of current events that you need to know. But the other thing is, to become a good DPO or to become a good privacy professional, knowledge isn't the only thing that's going to get you there.
No, and funny enough, we talk about it on the CM. We actually talk about CIPM. We actually talk about the personal characteristics of, enthusiasm, people person, buy-in.
I hate people.
Well, I mean,
I'm kind of kidding.
When we talk about, I personally, talk about approaches as well. I go in and kind of say, well, if you go in saying do this or the law will bite you, you could look at the evidence as a management team and go, well, actually, what's the chances of the regulator biting me? I'm not going to bother. So I actually and
I hate that. And you didn't tell me in your policy, what's the chances that you're actually going to get caught? Oh, okay. So the chances may actually be pretty slim. But the problem is, one, you want to be an ethical company doing the right thing and following the law.
Yeah.
Two, if you do get caught, that's not going to be pretty.
No, it isn't. But, I've never tried to sell data protection by blackmail. Do this or bad things will happen. I've always tried to sell it on return on investment, privacy by design, do this and good things will happen,
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the structure of the exam, there's two sorts of questions, both multiple choice. One is, your standard question and answer, the Council of Europe is A, an international organization, B, an economic and political union, C, an international terrorist organization, and D, a bicycle saddle. That's your standard. Hopefully everybody online will have picked out it's an international organization, not an economic and political union. Then your other one is a scenario-based question.
Well, here's the thing, but they need to know what an international organization is. Paul and I talked about this, so many years ago. So just in case, an international organization is not an organization that does business internationally. It is a specific type of organization that is outside any particular type of data protection law, like the Red Cross, the World Economic Forum. I don't know.
NATO.
I know there's a list of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got to know the difference between this sort of thing. And that's the stuff you might catch up. But that's the first sort of question, just standard Q&A. The second sort of question is these scenario-based questions where you'll get 7 or 8 paragraphs. So-and-so is a flower shop. They buy a marketing list from so-and-so. They give it to their cloud provider so-and-so.
And what should they do?
Yeah, and so-and-so then has a data breach. And then you'll get 4 or 5 questions, who's the controller? What should they have done before buying the list? Who's responsible for the breach? Who should they notify? She'll get 4 or 5 questions on a scenario. And my big advice to people sitting the exam is sometimes look at the question before you look at the scenario. So you can kind of go, is this a data breach question? Is this a controller process? Then go and find the detail.
Yeah, then be reading it with those questions in mind, because otherwise you're just going to go back and be reading it again anyway.
And with the standard questions, my advice is work out what the question's asking you. And I know that sounds stupid, but the way these question writers do it is they think of a question, they think of an answer, then they try and complicate the question with what they call 1, 2, or 3 degrees of complication. So you almost need to unpick them.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes look at the answers and go, oh, look, the answers include SCCs and BCRs. This is probably an international transfer question. You know, and the answer includes 30 days, 45 days. This is probably a
individual rights, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. So you know, look at the answers, work out what the question's really asking you to, get rid of the extraneous rubbish that they might have added to the question to make it more difficult, you know, and of course, you know, make sure you're prepared, as we were saying, use the tools that you're given with those common body of knowledge and such like. And that's regardless of whatever exam you're taking, really,
right.
Whatever exam. You know, I mean, some exams are different than others. For example, the stuff I was doing in Maastricht, you know, is a written exam and observation on the course. So not just a sort of an exam at the end, you know. But,
nice.
You know, and I wonder whether there's actually any substitute for practical experience, of course. But you can know everything there is to do, but how you actually apply it inside an organization is always the question.
Absolutely. And it also depends on a key part of this, and we'll bring this to a close here in a little bit, but it also brings it to a key part of this is you need to have business intelligence. No matter what you recommend doing, no matter what actions you take, ultimately the decision is up to the business, not up to you. And some DPOs, privacy people, and yes, you can be both a privacy professional and a data protection officer, or you could be one or the other. They serve different purposes. But all you can do is document the risk. And if they decide to do something against your advice, you just need the documentation. Now, is that documentation going to help you, or is it going to help the company?
Yeah.
That's the thing. But documentation is always your friend. But in some cases, when the business wants to make a decision, despite the risk, sometimes all you can do is say, okay, let me see what else I can do to mitigate that risk. And so you know what the law says you should be doing, but you got to have enough business intelligence to understand how to work with the business in the sector they're in the demographic they serve, with the audience. And no, I'm not saying cut corners. I'm being very practitioner based here.
No, I agree.
You work in the real world.
Mm. Yeah, and you know, sometimes that can be frustrating. You know, it's the standard answer.
Very frustrating.
It depends. You know, I was talking to a client earlier, and they were saying about data sharing of essentially potentially violent people with partners in the same industry sector. You know, and that's an interesting thing. You're treating people differently without trial, you know, but then we want to protect ourselves as well. And they're saying, well, you know, it's all a balancing act, right? So you've got to come up with your rationale, you perhaps do a DPAA, work out what you want to transfer, have a policy on it, you know, have all those sort of accountability items in place so that if you are questioned, you've got a solid rationale and you didn't just do it willy-nilly, right?
Exactly. If the company says they can't do something, find ways to mitigate those risks that you can put in place, that you can take all rational action to do so.
Because I see too many data protection who are crusaders, and being a crusader is no bad thing. I don't use that term pejoratively, but actually, you know, sometimes I see people and I'm like, you know, data protection, privacy, be all and end all. We're a human rights crusader, and therefore the business can do nothing. And that,
right.
And I think, well, great, but I probably wouldn't employ you.
Right. Because it really is about effectuating change.
Yeah.
And you can effectuate change. There's very few companies who are so perfect they don't need to change anything. Let's just say that when it comes to protecting data. But otherwise, the goal is to effectuate change, meaning the ultimate goal is to protect the people whose data you manage. And that might be employees, that might be people with your vendors, that might be your end users. You don't know who all it might touch. And you can't just say it only applies to my customers, consumers, the end users. No, it applies to every individual. When we're talking about GDPR here in the US, and it depends on what the states are covering. they're cutting out employees. I know that's very frustrating to people in the UK. Is that, why aren't you protecting all individuals? Well, because we're in the US.
But that's all going to change when you have the American Privacy Act or going through that is going to preempt all of the state laws, right? As I understand it.
Did you hear my eyes roll?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Californians have decided that if the American privacy laws are going to, the federal ones are going to preempt the state ones, it's all over right there, right?
It's absolutely bonkers how it is. But what it comes down to is, one, exams. Do what you're supposed to do to prepare for the exams. Two, the practical experience to do what you can on the job. And then, Ralph, what would you say number 3 is to bring us to a close? And I was asking him this, so this is a totally unexpected question.
Yeah, this is a totally unexpected question. So you can see I'm giving myself time to think. No, number 3.
At least he didn't say, and that's an interesting question, Kay. I appreciate that you asked me that. That's a stupid response. Go ahead.
No, number 3 is these qualifications are going to be great evidence of competence. They're going to be great to have on your CV. They're going to get you in the door for a job interview. What they're not going to do is sell yourself in that job interview or do the job for you. So whilst I love all these qualifications, I think they're wonderful. They're wonderful things to have on your CV. They're great starting points. But I tell people, even while I'm sitting there training them, new laws, new regulations, new case law is coming out all the time. So, get the qualifications, they'll get you in the door. But you've got to keep yourself there up and current from that point onwards.
And I will say that that's something that our podcast is very good at on the current events part, is it does tell you the hot items in the news. It does actually help prepare you for going into a customer or a potential employer and interviewing. And
definitely. So next time you go for a privacy job, and they say, do you have the CIPE, CIPM? And you say, no, I listen to the Serious Privacy podcast.
Exactly. Duh. Done deal. Hire me.
That's the perfect place to leave it, I think.
And with that, we will leave it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. We'll throw all the links we can down in the show notes. If you have any questions or comments, please do let us know. This is a wonderful thing. I'd love to open up for discussion on the Serious Privacy page on LinkedIn. So we might do that, or Twitter. I'm not a big person on Twitter, in case y'all hadn't realized. So might be a great place to open that up as well. So as always, if you like us, please tell the world. Indicate it, make some comments, follow us on Twitter. The podcast is at Podcast Privacy on Twitter. I'm at Heart of Privacy. Paul is at EuroPaulB, and Ralph is at
IGR O'Brien.
IGR O'Brien. So you can find us all. What, Ralph?
With an E.
With an E, exactly. Not an A, with an E. And you can find us on LinkedIn. We all have our pages. We're not hard to find. Look for Ralph under R_T. Look for Serious Privacy. We do have a page there. Let your friends know. We love what we do. We don't necessarily love the production side of it, but we do love what we do, to be able to hear from y'all, to be able to answer your questions, to have people like Ralph on our show to share their expertise. Seriously, if you have an opportunity to take a course from him, please do so. He really is that good. And we thank you as always. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace, so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on NIMD research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows, to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.